Hi, I'm Jake Smith along with Bill Colley. Boardwalk Potatoes. Get your skin in the game. You like that one, Bill?
Skin in the game. Yeah, you sound like a golfer. I was not very good at that.
Well, Bill, we were shocked just a few days ago to get the news that President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump had been diagnosed with COVID-19. First, let me ask you politically, I don't think this hurts the president. All of those who have already committed to supporting him, I don't think going to change their votes. But I go back to 1981 when President Reagan was shot. I go back, I guess, was it 1984 or 1985, where he had his bout with colon cancer. Those kinds of things kind of created the Reagan persona that we have today, that he was a very courageous and a very strong, physically and mentally strong president. Does Donald Trump get the same bounce from that, do you think, with his battle from COVID-19?
I think so. I'm reminded of a joke at the time that Jay Leno told, that the Soviet Union would have all of these general secretaries of the Communist Party after Brezhnev, and they'd put one guy in and he'd be dead shortly thereafter. It was what, Chernenko and Andropov. And so Jay Leno's on the Tonight Show and he says, yeah, they think they're pretty tough over there, don't they? Their guy gets a cold, he's dead in 2 weeks. Our guy gets a bullet, he's up walking around in 2 days.
Yeah, so, I mean, but does President Trump get the benefit politically of beating this the way Reagan beat an assassin's bullet, the way Reagan beat colon cancer? This is a different country now than it was back in 1981 politically, culturally. What do you think?
Well, I suppose so, because people are so polarized. The polarization actually, though, was pretty heated. Liberals certainly didn't like Ronald Reagan at the time, and the media didn't like him, although I guess they personally liked him. They have a special dislike personally for Donald Trump. So they're asking all of these questions right now saying, hey, we're not getting, or they're telling us we're not getting the full story of his illness. But then I see a video of him this morning. It looks fine. So I don't know what that's all about. I suppose they're trying to tell people that they're being lied to, but here's Trump sitting at a table with his cufflinks on, looking very nattily dressed, just chatting away. And the public can see this, and the public can see over the media.
Do you remember Reagan waving outside his hospital room window after
I believe the same room. I believe the same room.
Okay, there you go. And do you remember that the country kind of relaxed after that happened? Now, I was telling my one of those people on the radio station that I work with on Saturday that there's a perception that the Reagan administration was successful from day one and it was off to the races the day of the inauguration. That wasn't true. The beginning days, the first days of the Reagan administration were rather stagnant. President Reagan was having trouble getting his programs through Congress. He didn't have that relationship with Tip O'Neill that's become historical now that we know about it. After the assassination attempt is really when the Reagan doctrine started to take hold and the Reagan administration started to take hold. And many Americans started calling their Democrat congressmen and senators saying, I support this president. Reagan's program started getting through Congress. Bill, you remember the same?
I do. I think that it put a lot of pressure on people in the House and Senate, and they had to follow that. I will, though, offer what you might call a little counterintuitive, well, maybe a caveat.
All right.
And that is what we've seen happen in the year 2020. If you go back and you look at the late 1970s with Jimmy Carter, who's, leagues apart when it comes to President Trump. But Carter ended up going through a whole series, hostage crisis, then the failed rescue of the hostages, being attacked by a rapid. I mean, there's just the bizarre things that were happening to the guy, and help with his dispatch back to Georgia. So that's the only thing I worry about, is that Mr. Trump, a good friend of ours, Professor Helen McCaffrey, sent me a message this morning and said, it's almost as if Donald Trump is experiencing the life in the book of Job with what he is going through. And you wonder how anybody could stand up to this, because it is just so constant and none of it of his making.
Well, it's a fair point, Bill. Now, I put together something I told you this morning this is the Boardwalk Potatoes scoreboard. First of all, after the news was released the other day that the president had been diagnosed with COVID, Chinese state media mocked the news, that the president and first lady had been diagnosed with COVID-19. And then it was shortly after that that Marxist state media, that's what I call the media in this country, Marxist state media. There's no difference between their relationship and the DNC than Chinese state media and Xi Jinping. They're one and the same. But they started working diligently to extract their pound of flesh from the diagnosis. Do you think this is going to play well with the American people?
I think that every time the Chinese or even liberals shoot off their mouths about this, that it does benefit President Trump. I saw some comments just before we hit air from Ilhan Omar, and she initially tries to sound sympathetic, but then says, "Well, this killed my father, and these evil Republicans. This is what they've."
Somebody did something. Another somebody did something segment, Bill.
Yeah, I'm so sick of hearing that. And then Chris Rock, what is he shows up on Saturday Night Live and says something to the effect of, "President has COVID. I feel bad for COVID."
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And then you even had one former Obama administration official who's not one of the major players, but tweeted out the other day that he hoped that this killed the president. I think we've crossed the line. If anybody had said that about Barack Obama, if you'd said that or I had said that, we would have lost our jobs.
Well, here's some of the things that I kept track of this weekend, Bill. House Speaker Nancy Stretch Pelosi, she was on MSNBC and said Trump's behavior was brazen. So if that's the case, then what Stretch is saying is that the president deserved this. Isn't that what she's saying?
Yeah, the argument. Well, they didn't like to wear masks, and they weren't really thrilled with testing. This thing is so easily passed around by the sounds of things. I'm going to guess that even though we only have 7 million people nationally diagnosed with it, that you could easily say 70 to 100 million people have been exposed to it. So to sit here,
Joe Biden said 200 million had died. So there's a little discrepancy in your mathematics here.
A few million fewer mouths in Joe Biden's household to feed now.
Yeah.
I think that what we're hearing from everybody on the left is they want to continue to fan the flames that this thing is the Black Plague.
We've got him this time. We thought we had him with Russia. We thought we had him with the Ukraine. We've got him this time. He's going to die. That's what they're thinking, and that's what they're saying. 40% of registered Democrats, a Politico poll yesterday, Bill, said that they were happy that President Trump contracted the coronavirus. Happy. 40% of registered Democrats happy that the president contracted the virus. That's sick.
Yeah, I don't like liberals, but I don't go around with ill will. I saw a post the other day from a liberal college professor out of Texas, Wichita Falls, I think in Texas, I think it's called. And this guy said that he wanted cops strangled with the intestines.
Oh yeah, isn't that great? Yeah.
They sit around in liberal land and they think up these torture fantasies. I don't know what kind of people they are, but they didn't have a very good formation.
Bill, by their words, we know them. By their deeds, we know them. I mean, really. Listen to this. Less than 12 hours after the president was admitted to Walter Reed, leftist protesters gathered at the hospital to yell out, "F the president, we hope you die, and F the Trumps." Some of them had Biden campaign signs. Now, I didn't see Joe Biden or Kamala the Commie Harris or anyone from the Harris administration around yesterday to denounce this, Bill. Not one word from the Biden campaign to denounce this. Your thoughts?
Nobody in media, while they're demanding that President Trump disavow anybody who's a white nationalist or supremacist, nobody in media is asking any Democrats to disavow that kind of horse manure.
Right. Well, here's the one that really got to me. Boogie Woogie Buglebeak, Bette Midler. She put some snarky thing on Twitter after the news went public. Gee, she said, she woke up this morning to learn Donald and Melania Trump have tested positive for COVID-19. The Beast of Burden, Bette Midler wrote, "How can a hoax infect anyone?" That's a new one on me. That's Boogie Woogie Buglebeak, Bette Midler, Bill.
Again, she had a hit back in 1973?
Yes, Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy.
Not much since. Maybe one movie role.
What are your thoughts about that?
You talk about somebody washed up and has been. I'm sorry. Just celebrity opinions are about as useless as a bag of garbage.
Well, here's one thing I'd like to point out to Bette Midler, Bill. She should listen to these words.
God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from a distance.
Yep, right. What does she think about what damage she's doing to her own soul by those types of things? I mean, isn't she the one that sings these wonderful spiritual songs from a distance?
They actually have to believe it, and I don't really think that it's the godless party and filled with godless people. They're not worried about judgment because they don't believe in judgment.
Well, I think the biggest balloon, Bill, that was popped was MSNBC's Stephanie Rule. She told Nancy Pelosi in an interview, I know you probably saw this, she was next in line to succession to the presidency. I don't think so. She's not. Mike Pence is. Sorry, Nancy, you are not next in line to the presidency, even though this idiot Stephanie Rule from MSNBC thinks so. You're shaking your head. But these people are making tons of money on TV saying this, Bill.
Well, you got basketball players who are tweeting and saying that if President Trump gets another 4 years, they're leaving the country and moving to Hawaii.
Go.
The average liberals.
Well, Hawaii is a high tax state, so they probably will have to pay more as far as tax dollars are concerned, right?
I have a size 15 shoe, and it's a big shoe, but it's bigger than most liberal IQs. I will say one thing, you bring up faith in all of this. I had a thought driving home from work on Friday morning. 2020 has been an awful year. I almost think, though, in a way that it is preparation for something tougher times that are coming. And I think for a conservative and a Christian that it's easier to deal with than it is for a liberal. I also think Donald Trump would be a much better manager in tougher times than Joe Biden, who sometimes spits out his teeth when he's in the middle of a debate.
Well, or they fall out, one or the other.
Yeah.
Bill. Yeah, they fall out.
I look at that situation, and I got to be honest with you. I really do believe that this is just a preparation. This is the training for much, much worse that could be on the way.
Well, President Trump did hear and has heard many of the prayers and the kind thoughts that have been being sent his way. Here's what the president had to say.
So I just want to tell you that I'm starting to feel good. You don't know over the next period of a few days. I guess that's the real test. So we'll be seeing what happens over those next couple of days. I just want to be so thankful for all of the support I've seen, whether it's on television or reading about it. I most of all appreciate what's been said by the American people, by almost a bipartisan consensus of American people. It's a beautiful thing to see, and I very much appreciate it, and I won't forget it. I promise you that.
Bill, this president is the most prayed for president perhaps in history. People have been praying for him since day one. And, clearly at least half the country is praying for this president right now. Maybe 40% of registered Democrats, they are happy that the president has this virus, but those 40% probably know he's going to be reelected less than a month from now.
I really believe so. I can look at various polls, and friend sent us a poll this morning that leads me to believe that the polling data is still all over the map. But I put up a video yesterday. I don't know how I mentioned this, how reasonable people can believe that what's being offered by the other side would be good for their own lives and liberty and for America, because it won't be. It'll be terrible. And we'll be Venezuela writ large in another 10 to 20 years if this happens. You would think that people, they're capable of thinking a bit more than beyond just tomorrow.
Well, CNN is reporting that this diagnosis that's affected the president and many members of his staff, his cabinet, has what can be traced back to the meetings with Judge Amy Coney Barrett. Now, Chuck Schumer said yesterday, we've got to stop this. We've got to stop this. I mean, they're looking for anything to stop the confirmation process. But CNN, of course, the Chinese news network, communist news network, whatever you want to call them, they are now blaming what's happened to President Trump, First Lady Melania, and others as being spread at the meeting discussing the Amy Coney Barrett nomination at the White House. Bill, your response to that?
Well, I guess probably the liberals would call her the Holy Roman Empress. Yeah, She doesn't have it. She's a strong Christian believer, we should point out. She doesn't have it. She walked out of that meeting apparently, and her whole family sitting in the front row seemed to be just fine.
Bill, there is going to be apparently a debate between President Harris, Vice President presidential candidate Kamala the Commie Harris, and the real Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, on Wednesday, I believe it is scheduled. But again, Kamala the Commie, every time a quote of hers is released, we are coming for your guns. We are going to force you to wear masks. We are going to take your 401ks. We. The Republicans need to seize on that word we. I believe it'll be very effective with the American people with respect to campaign ads. And I'd also like to point out that the Biden attack ads have actually gotten more intense since the president was hospitalized on Friday. Can you imagine if the situation was reversed? The Marxist state media would be all over the Republicans for continuing to campaign in the midst of a national crisis. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, again, we're kind of beating a dead horse when we say that media is just nothing but an appendage of the Democrat National Committee.
No question.
Has been for decades. I am concerned. I think whenever I hear that they're going to take this and they're going to make you do that, Americans.
Who's we? The Republicans need to define for the American people who we are. Correct?
I think so. But I'm a little split on this. There's that meme that Ted Nugent likes to share that says one side has 18 trillion rounds of ammunition, the other doesn't know which bathroom to use. Very funny.
Right.
But so many people jumped on board and are still on the bandwagon with the pandemic, the panic over that. I was out driving around yesterday and I was listening to Dave Ramsey, and Dave Ramsey said he had just checked on the CDC data on this, and he said basically you have a 99% survival rating or rate no matter what age.
We're learning, medical science is learning more and more about how to treat the symptoms of the onset of symptoms of COVID-19. So people aren't getting to the point where they need a ventilator, correct?
But so many people are still walking around in masks and giving you a hard time if you're not wearing a mask. And
Right.
I was at a gas station yesterday and some fellow I had just been in and I wasn't wearing a mask when I went in. And this fellow he was at the pump next to me. He started to head inside and his wife said, "Don't forget your mask." So if we're a country that has fallen for this, I don't know. Maybe they will be able to convince us that we're supposed to give up our guns and that we'll let them run every aspect of our lives. I just don't think it can be very efficient. And I think whatever they're proposing is going to lead to economic ruin and stagnation. And so a very rough time of 10 to 20 years could be ahead for the American people. But maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need that Babylonian captivity experience, and maybe this is coming.
It's possible. Bill, the next week, give us your prediction of what this next week is going to hold. I know the news cycle is such that it changes not every 10 hours, but every 10 minutes. What do you think this week is going to look like? Does the president get out of the hospital in 3 to 4 days? Does the news become more serious? I just had one of my listeners send me a message that Yahoo is basically saying that the president's at death's door. And my response to that listener was, do not listen to anything that Yahoo says. It's not a viable news network. What do you think?
Yahoo is a wholly owned subsidiary again of the DNC. I think Tuesday, no later than Wednesday, the president is back at the White House. He may be in isolation and doing a lot more conference calls, but he's back to work. And the efforts to stall the confirmation hearings for Judge Barrett, that won't fly.
He's not going to grant an interview to Costa from CNN when he gets back, Bill. A face-to-face interview,
up close and personal. I think that they make a mistake too, using people like Schumer as public face of their party, because I look at Schumer and I just think wuss every time I see him. He had to be the biggest wimp growing up. I remember Jim Corey, who's a vice president of the National Association of Chiefs of Police. Jim's an old friend from way back in my early radio talk show days, and Jim he'd worked undercover narcotics in New York City for many, many years, and knew Schumer. And I said one day, he's a pretty rough and tough guy, isn't he? And Jim started to talk and then realized what I was saying and burst out laughing. You get a guy who looks like Al Lewis and you put him up there in front of a camera, which he loves, and you'd say, this is the face of our party. Go right ahead. Make my
Well,
day.
it's Sunday. You know, Schumer always does his pressers on Sunday from in front of the federal building in Manhattan, the lower Manhattan. So we'll see if he does that today. Here's what I think is going to happen this week. I think the president's back in the White House sometime Wednesday before the debate. So Mike Pence can then talk about the fact that the president is back to work during the debate. I think that's the way it's going to be. I think the president will have to rework his schedule around his Make America or Keep America Great Again rallies. And I think that there'll be large screens. The people will gather and the president will speak to them there. I think that there will be an effort to try to keep the campaign moving as it was before the diagnosis. That's what I think is going to come this week.
I'll take it a step further because I mentioned Jimmy Carter, who once tried to revive fireside chats. The president
He
can't
did wear a
get out-
sweater, remember? Because
the
he
president-
dropped
yeah.
the White House thermostat down to 65 degrees, and that's why he wore a sweater.
If the president can't get out to rallies, I sent him a message, personal message, not that he's reading it, but somebody in the White House is looking at these things. And I said, in this age, day and age with streaming and people willing to stream anything on Facebook that they follow, start doing your own version of fireside chats almost daily, every evening from the White House, just sitting there talking directly to the American people in a nice calming tone. And if you can't get out for a couple of weeks, I think that'll really build some credibility.
That's interesting. That fireside chat by Jimmy Carter. I remember that Archie and Edith did a little segment on All in the Family about that. And I remember Archie saying, Edith, let me ask you one thing. Do you think that Jimmy Carter's keeping himself warm in the White House with a meatloaf? But this has been Boardwalk Potatoes. Bill Colley, Twin Falls, Idaho. Jake Smith on the Delmarva Peninsula. Remember, get your skin in the game. Don't forget to become a member of Boardwalk Potatoes. If you like what you see, say that and leave us some comments as well. Let us know what you think about the work that we're doing here on Boardwalk Potatoes. Until next time, I'm Jake Smith along with Bill Colley. Have a great day.